Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever it may be for you, maybe even good morning. Today, we are chatting with Devin Hunter. You might know him around here. He's got some books going on. He's got a podcast, a little bit of everything, which I love. I love a little bit of everything. And he likes plants, so that makes me happy too. So, and let's see what we got. I see Devin just popped on. I think I can request you, actually. I'm going to invite you. Ta-da! Let's see what happens. You never know what the gram does. Hello.
Hello. How are you
How are
today?
you?
I'm good. I have been working on Instagram content basically all day. So this fits perfectly right in with the theme.
Yes.
And,
I'm
happy to
so
be
jealous.
I'm happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you. Let me turn up my volume here. It's like a little low. There we go. I love your hat.
Thank you. I love your hair. I was just like, I'm back to my natural color, but I miss the green hair very much. And so oh, beautiful hair. It's fantastic.
I'm doing it just for you. And well, you know, the best part of it is it's the name of the color is called Area 51.
Even better.
It just makes it amazing. I'm totally amazing.
Yeah.
So
what company are you? What's the brand?
I use of course now I'm gonna draw a blank because it'll come to me. Oh my god. I've been using it forever and ever and I totally just drew a blank. Like I'm gonna go run in my bathroom and look because it's gonna annoy me. Give me a moment. I'll remember.
By all means.
It will happen. It will come back to me.
Yeah.
So we have you on today. We're here to talk about your new book coming out and all the other things you got going on. Yay!
Yeah, lots of exciting stuff.
Sure. I know. And I love Marcus sent me the portfolio for the book and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's blowing my mind.
It's so they did a really great job with that. That's so exciting. That's so exciting. So I want to just start right at the beginning. I want to hear about your magical beginnings. Like, how did all of this start for you?
Oh goodness. I was a weird kid who talked to things and went looking. I mean, the Reader's Digest version is that I was the weird kid who went looking for answers and found witchcraft. And I come from it's better now, but the area I grew up in was very poor and lots of drugs and things like that. And so witchcraft was my anti-drug. But and so but that's basically it. I mean, I was a psychic kid. I went looking for answers and found them in the craft, and then I stuck around. And I credit witchcraft for everything from saving my life to putting me on this fantastic path that I'm on today. So I'm a witch through and through.
Yes, I am right there, right behind you. I was pretty much like the same thing. Like I just came from like an awful family, the whole bit, like you said, and that was like my escape, that in like 80s movies. That's why I have an arm full of them, because like that was my escape and that's where I went. So I totally got that. So what was like the first witchy book you read? Do you remember?
Yes, very well.
Yes, I think we all remember.
Yeah, right. So the first book I actually got my hands on was Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Hewson. And if people don't know what it is, it's not a beginner book, and it's definitely, and it was written in the 70s, at a time when witchcraft looked and felt very different than it does today, or than it did like when you and I were growing up. And so it's a lot of people, like when I was growing up, it had a reputation for just being like a dark book, and so, but that's what I learned on. So it was, and it really what it was, I had a friend who, the only other witch in school, we met each other at a school dance.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like, she was wearing a pentacle, and I was like, are you a witch? And,
oh my God.
and she was like, yeah, totally. It was like, let's be best friends.
Yes. And so instant best friends.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And funny, she doesn't practice anymore, but she did all through high school, and we were witchy buddies, and it was great. But, and she had a pentacle on, and so we were just like instant best friends, and she had found this book in her grandmother's attic, and it was from when
Ooh.
her aunt was dabbling in the occult arts when she was a teenager. So she just found this old book in this attic, and then like hid it, right? Because none of us were supposed to be doing that.
No, no, we hide all those things.
Yep. And so I got my hands on it, and it was like holding, the most sacred thing in the universe to me. So, but yeah, it was definitely not a beginner book, I wouldn't say.
Right.
And then I got Teen Witch and all of the other stuff, but I started with some heavy stuff.
Like you just dove right in head first.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
I'm a witch. Here I am. There it goes.
Yeah. Without question.
And one of mine was Spiral Dance by Starhawk. And, it's kind of like beginner, but it's like dives right into it. There's like some big things happening in that book.
Yes,
and you're just like
heavy stuff.
Flying down the moon. What? It was like, it was a lot going on. So I was right there. And, the internet wasn't a thing, sadly, but not sadly. I'm kind of happy. I'm happy that I found all of these things in the time I did, because it's so different now too. And I feel like kind of like our generation just really has a different outlook on it because of that. We don't take it for granted, because I do feel like some people are, because they know they can just type it in and find whatever they need right then and there, where we had to research that shit. We had to trial and error everything, and that's how we learned.
Yeah.
So,
we're the reason all that shit's online now. So
exactly. All of you can thank us, please. Monetary gifts are always welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I feel you on that, because I feel like the availability of things and the fact that the internet, I talk a lot about this on the show in the last season, because I was struggling with just being somebody who wants to be just an authentic witch doing his own thing, and feeling like I had to create a bunch of content to stay relative with, for teenagers, basically.
Right.
And it was just it really gave me a mind, it gave me a whole thing. So I got burnt out, and I just was over it. And in the whole process with things, I realized that, we have these little echo chambers on the internet, and witchcraft information tends to be very stuck in those little echo chambers. And it doesn't really matter so much what you say. Like if somebody posts a video and you want to do a commentary back on it, it doesn't really matter what you say. Right. Because that person's speaking to their group of people in their little echo chamber and all that kind of stuff. So, and then again, it came to this, my husband, I can say that now, my husband.
Yay! Yes, congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. It was very weird. Very fast and very weird.
I love it.
I was really bummed out and just having a difficult time, because I'd ran into some issues where people were totally taking what I was saying out of context, and I'm not an asshole. I just kind of sound like one online sometimes, I guess, and I don't mean to. And so
I'm not an asshole in real life, promise.
Yeah. And Matt came to me and he was like, "You do realize that you're upset over, a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old." And it wasn't to dismiss them, but it was this idea that you're 35. Like, what are you doing? Like, why do you, and I realized that a big part of it, and in talking to a lot of other authors and a lot of other witchcraft people this year through the show and everything, a lot of us do, because we have to put ourselves out there, and because we have to be so vulnerable in the way that we do in order to be able to get people to pay attention to us so we can sell a book.
Right.
It makes us feel like we're in high school, and there's a lot of that high school stuff that comes bubbling up. And looking at it from that angle of being like, okay, so as an elder millennial, I'm really a geriatric millennial, but as a geriatric millennial, I realized I probably have a lot of inner child work to do. I didn't really get a childhood.
I
Matt and I joke about we buy so many toys and stuff now, and I'm on a total retro 90s kid, anything. I'm here for it. 80s movies. It's a whole thing. And so I'm reliving my childhood in a lot of ways. And I feel like my internet experience to some extent has been like this, as a spiritual person looking at it right now and looking back on it, okay, this is you got to deal with this stuff that you never really had to deal with or got to deal with before. And now it's in this very different dynamic. So I think that's kind of trippy.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to roll with that. And we're just going to say it's that there's some spiritual lessons in it and, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. But
That's the best way to go with it, because then
yeah,
forget it. We're going to get lost in it. But it's
exactly.
so true though, because obviously I'm very eccentric myself, and I didn't have a child. I was out of my house when I was 14. I was on my own. So, you know what I mean? And it is like, you're just kind of going through that, and you notice that, like you said, why is this 15-year-old triggering me? Because they have a big mouth, and they have like, keyboard warrior going on. And
Yeah.
it is, it is like, it's just such a weird thing. And it's something that I think that nobody's really super talking about either.
Yeah.
Like, they're not like really paying attention to it. They're just like getting into it. Like, you see people arguing with other people and on it and all. And it's like, guys, no. Like, I'm always like, you know what? So, go in your notes, type the response you want, leave it there for 24 hours. And if you come back to it and you really feel like you still need to post it, then you go for it. But I'll tell you, 95% of the time, you're going to be like,
Right.
this is stupid.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
just taking that pause and being mindful. And I think we get lost in that. And we forget that a lot,
Yeah, I would
for sure.
100% agree with
Yeah,
that.
definitely. Yeah. So what was your first tarot deck?
My first tarot deck, it was the Dragon Tarot, and
Ooh.
and I got it when I was 13. My dad took me to a Borders, which doesn't exist anymore. Borders no longer.
Yeah.
They went the way of Blockbuster. So
poor Blockbuster.
Yeah. I learned all my witchy movies from Blockbuster too. But so it was the Dragon Tarot, and I love dragons. Like, and and not in the like Tolkien Dungeons and Dragons kind of way. Like, I feel, and I've always had this kind of resonance with dragons where I acknowledge that they exist in all of these cultures, so there has to be a thing there. And
right.
And I've worked with people who like did like really intense dragon magic. And I have friends who like do drumming next to a giant waterfall, and they can see they've got video of like the water kind of opening up while they're playing the drum. And
that's
it's
so cool.
very much like, there's going on. So
yes.
I love dragons, and that deck kind of sealed my fate with that, I think. And so I kept it, and then for a very, very long time, and I went to a festival, and I think I was teaching at a festival and doing readings, and rain, and I lost my deck, and I was very sad, but I was like, oh, okay, that is the universe, you know how we do,
exactly.
And
it's
so,
that water elemental dragon decided you were done with it.
It was done. It was time. So I was like, okay. But then I realized that that particular deck was really helpful in communicating with a particular spirit guide that I worked with. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I need to get it. And I couldn't find it. It went out of print. And so there was like this whole to do. And then I eventually did get my hands on it. But now it's like it's as basic as it is, because it's a very basic tarot deck.
Right.
It is one of my most coveted things. I covet it like a dragon, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I love that. You protect it like an egg, like just
yes.
I know. Well, I love that. My first one was just a Rider-Waite-Smith. That was the only one that they had, and that's the one. But I still have it, and I always use it when I'm writing. Like, I always take it out when I'm writing. Like, that is just something. And I don't even think I like subconsciously. I did it subconsciously, because like one day I had it sitting. I'm like, why is that even out? And I'm like, oh, I'm writing. Oh, okay. This is all like going together well. All right. So it is that first deck. You do definitely. That's like the one, and no matter what it is, even if it's just that ugly Rider-Waite-Smith.
Yeah. Well, and two, like, I mean, imagine how much energy is in those decks. So like when I was really hitting the psychic circuit and the tarot circuit and doing a bunch of readings and all of that good stuff, I was in a situation where I was learning that every time I was doing a reading, the cards were getting like amped up, and there was like all this energy going into it. And even when you try to clear it, and you do all this, like once you've done 1,000 readings with the deck, that hooker is like charged. Like
it is like it's glowing at that point.
Yes, it's like it is a power source. So I started this ritual where, granted, I don't do readings like I used to, but
Yeah.
where once I hit 1,000 readings with a deck, I would retire it, and then I would be
Yeah.
like, if it made it that long, which was very rare. But I mean, so maybe once a year I'd get to retire a deck and go get a new one, and but then
Yeah.
that deck that was retired, I would use in spells, and I would use when I was working with, writing and things like that. Just
Right.
having it around because it's so charged and it's got such a history to it. It's
Mm-hmm.
loaded, and
Right.
so yeah,
Yeah.
great for
No, and
spells. Great for spells.
no, it does. It totally makes sense too. And and I used to do, all the festivals or whatever. And I don't do them. I don't do readings at them anymore. It's just a lot. I'm gonna leave that to the newbies that need the practice. Like I'm good. I'm good. And it's like after doing like 50 something readings in a night, you have like the worst spiritual hangover ever. I don't care how much you ground, how much you clear, like you're burnt, you're done, you're toast.
Well, you can't really enjoy the event in any way, shape, or form, really, either,
Right.
because
And you can't either.
yeah,
And the thing is the questions that you do get at those too sometimes. Wow.
yeah,
You're just like,
yeah,
wow, okay,
yeah,
here we are.
yeah. I mean, I credit how quickly I grew as a psychic
Mm-hmm.
because of those events, because of
Oh,
going to go do
absolutely.
those things. Because I tell people like, oh no, like this wasn't, I don't recommend it. Like it was constant hangover. It was
Yeah.
constant exhaustion. It was constant, just all the time, all over the place. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
this,
Yeah.
but some people love it, and
No,
I
they
love the
do.
people who love it, and I love that.
No,
It is
absolutely.
not
We need
when I was
them.
younger, yes, but
Yeah. We
not
need
anymore.
them for sure. And it's always like when I do teaching and stuff too for new readers, I'm just like, all right, well, and they're like, well, I don't know if I want to do this professionally. I don't know. I'm like, go do an event. Go do an event, see how you feel after that. And then, some love it. Some are like, you know what, maybe I'm not going to do that. And I think it's just a great way to figure it out too. And just figure it out, and you have to tap into every resource you have in your psyche to do those. So it is really good practice. Definitely, for sure.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how did you come about writing your first book?
Ooh, so well, I had the podcast, and the podcast was doing pretty good, and I again was conference hopping because I do lots of that, and so at least back before the pandemic, that was life. And I had met with some of the folks at Llewellyn who were interested in me pitching a book, and it was kind of a dream come true because when it's one of those weird things that, like, even when I was like a kid, I knew that I was going to write a book for Llewellyn. Like, I knew that was going to happen. It was just this thing.
Well, you see the little moon symbol and you're like, I want my name near that. Yes, yeah. I understand this.
And there was something that just was like, okay, if, you're going to write a book and it's going to be with this company, and I knew that at like 13, and then I sent a manuscript in at 19. No one should be writing magic books at 19. And
that's pretty awesome though. Like that's it. Like most adults can't do that.
It was bold. And it was a mess. It was called Universal Witch, and it was really about witchcraft, like the golden thread of witchcraft and how, blah, blah. And so I sent it in, and it made it through the second round of stuff, and then it didn't make it into the third round. And so I got a nice letter from Llewellyn that said sorry. I also had sent it just as a backup to Weiser, who very quickly was like, no, we're good.
They're like, no, bye.
And Llewellyn was more friendly about it, at the time. Totally different staff and editors, and I know.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it was all through letters. It wasn't like internet, like
exactly.
Email.
You did not email me. Yeah, you didn't email anything.
Yeah.
I had to go to Kinko's and get the whole thing printed up and do the whole thing.
Oh my God.
And I was poor. Like, I was a poor, just out of high school, working, and so it was a lot to go and print up this manuscript and get it sent up. And all my hopes and dreams were in it, and then they all came crashing down. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to go worry about all this other stuff. And life got busy and it's very serious. And so I kind of gave up on the idea of writing a book, because I had got my hopes up and then it came,
Right.
so I was like, no more, no, never again.
Yeah, I'm done with
And
that, right.
yeah, and I had been dealing with, like, I had a couple television producers come and they wanted to follow me around and stuff like that. So I started working more with TV stuff. And
Okay.
when that started to happen, the desire to write a book came up again because people started asking me questions, and
Right.
I was like, okay. So long story short, so Llewellyn asked, I was like, okay, let's do this. And I wanted to actually do my last book that came out, which was Modern Witch, Spells, Recipes,
Right.
Working, full photos and everything. And I'm a big proponent of witchcraft being art and witchcraft being beautiful. And I think that not only impacts your mind, but it impacts the way that you relate to your witchcraft.
Right.
And so when I wanted to do a full color, I wanted to do all the photos, I wanted to have my art, I wanted all of these things to be part of the process. And
Mm-hmm.
Llewellyn very kindly was like, that sounds incredibly expensive. Can you do something else? And it was really polite, but it was very much like, if you can prove to us that you can sell a book, then we'll talk about this other thing. So I
Right.
ended up sitting down and I'd been teaching a class for a couple of years called The People's Witchcraft. And I took it and basically deconstructed it and turned it into the Witch's Book of Power. And halfway through the Witch's Book of Power, I knew there was going to be the Witch's Book of Spirits. And then halfway through the Witch's Book of Spirits, I knew there was going to be the Witch's Book of Mysteries.
Oh,
And
I
so
love that.
I wrote those three in about 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a lot. But it's a complete little system of magic. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, it
Um,
is. I love the
yeah,
covers on them too. They're beautiful. They're
yeah,
so pretty. I like
yeah.
them.
Things need to be pretty. I'm very into that, and I have weird stuff with coloring because I'm a very creative person, and so color
Right.
really matters to me, and I very much want witchcraft to be like alive and
Mm-hmm.
potent. And I'm all for the black covers and all of the stuff that's an aesthetic. It's great, but
Yeah.
there's like other aesthetics, and I'm like,
Right.
so I
There
wanted
are
color
other
and I wanted,
things.
yes. And so here we are. But yeah, so
Right.
the Witch's Book of Power ended up turning into a 3-book series that we call the Witch Power series.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to work on Modern Witch, and so, which is great. And that took a long time,
I
because we had the
bet. Yeah.
pandemic and all of the, well, it was the tail end of the pandemic, and it dropped right, I think actually right at the start of the pandemic. And so
Oh,
it was hard. It was very, 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 very hard. And
yeah.
because of the way that we did it, we weren't able to have a digital copy. So the only way
Oh,
people can get it is if they hold a physical version of the book. And so
right.
the fact that it has able to sell sell as well as it has is a testament to working with just a really good group of people to make sure it's getting out there. But it was a weird experience because we had just assumed that people were going to go to a bookstore and they were going to pick it up and then instantly buy it
I
because
know,
it's this
because who
beautiful
would have
thing.
thought? Who would have
Yeah,
thought, right? I
yeah.
mean,
And then
wow.
nobody was going to bookstores no more. So we had
No.
that whole thing. So when I started working on this book that's coming out in November now,
November, yeah.
um, it was a beautiful, scary thing at the same time because we were in the pandemic. It was like high peak of the we're all locked in and not going
Right.
anywhere, and all of us were all authors in the house, and so we all were like, well, I guess it's time to write some books. What
Right.
else are we gonna
I
do?
know, everybody, I can see all four of you.
Yes, yeah. And so
I
everybody
love it.
starts doing that and trying to figure out who they are now, right? Because
Right.
I think we all are still doing that.
Yes.
Um, and
I don't think
so
that ever ends, honestly.
no, I don't think it does. I just think we're all in this collective awareness that we're all like really changing and having to cope with that and
Right.
reconcile. But anyway, so I ended up doing the crystal book, and we had a crystal shop when I started writing the crystal book,
Okay.
and it was around for 30 years. And so
Wow.
I love stones, and they've been a big part of my life for a very, very
Mhm.
long time. And then we closed the store because of the pandemic. And so I found myself huddled in my house with an entire store's inventory of stones.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of energy too.
It was a lot. And
Wow.
this beautiful opportunity to do something that had never been done before. And I knew, at this point, like I have a group of people who I get to work with over at Llewellyn who
Hmm.
we've done books together, like multiple
Yeah.
books. And so we know how we work together. And they also, like, it's so important, I've realized, for this kind of stuff that the people you're working with appreciate your vision of things and like don't
Yes.
try to like steer you away from that. And Llewellyn's been really great with that. And if there has been
Hmm.
any steering away from something, it's been like, this is a red flag, so
Right.
it's like that kind of stuff. So
Right. You're like, okay, wait, I should probably look at this. Right.
exactly,
Right.
yeah, because I'm a Sagittarius. I go over it. I go overboard sometimes. So,
Yeah. Right.
um, but great, but it's a really awesome book, and it's so pretty, and I got to do 99% of the photos,
Oh, you
all of
did.
the,
Oh,
yeah. So for both of
wow.
them, so it's all my photography, it's all my my art, my sigils,
Hmm.
it's my magic, it's my work. So I'm so excited for this to come out.
Oh,
It's
that's
been
so awesome.
years, 2 years we've been working on this,
Wow.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah,
I know. I'm excited to get it. Marcus is like, you'll get it as soon as we do. I'm like,
yeah, we're all like
yes.
this. Yeah,
No, it's so true.
it's a big
And I
thing.
think
Yeah,
it's so, I'm kind of like a baby into this, and I actually just got introduced to Heather, and I've been talking with her, and we were talking on the phone, and she has been like so great. And she was just like, yep, we want this the way, you do it, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay. It's like a kid in a
what?
candy store. I'm like,
Yeah.
let's do this then.
And
So
Heather's
that's
awesome.
been,
Heather's becoming my like my bestie. Like I've and I don't work with her at Llewellyn, which is probably why we're like, but because I
yeah.
think if we had to work together, it would be probably a little different. But I just adore her. And
Mhm.
everybody who I know who's working with her has like ridiculously positive things to
Yes.
say.
No,
Um,
absolutely. She's
and
really
I love that
awesome.
she seems to be getting some really cool people involved with
Hmm.
Llewellyn with this, because it seems like
Yeah.
there's like generations of authors and like waves of authors that come and go, and
Right.
and finding the voices in the moment is a really important thing
Hmm.
for any publishing house. I think that's an important thing. But when you're
Right.
doing something like what we do,
Hmm.
I often tell people, like, we're just having a discussion. We're the ones that are currently having this discussion.
Yeah.
We're going to pass it on to some other people, and they're going to write about it and hopefully move the discussion forward. But
Right.
that's
Right.
our job right now, is to take the discussion that had been had, bring it into the now, make it
Right.
make sense, right?
Hmm.
Fix the shit that neds to get fixed.
Yeah, like all the like
Um,
the real wonky stuff. Yeah, like
yeah,
we're not, we don't do
yeah,
that no more.
yeah,
That's no more
exactly.
thing.
Yeah. And then, just make sure that we have to, I hate, I'm going to sound like I feel so old saying this. We have to leave occultism better than we found it for the next generation. Like, I
Right.
firmly believe that. So,
Yeah.
um, and it's just the way it is. So I'm glad that people like you and Whiskey, and like, there's some cool, interesting
Hmm.
new energy that I'm super excited to have with me over there at Llewellyn,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
at Weiser, and at some of these other publishing houses and things like that too.
Right.
Those are just the two that, of course,
Yeah.
always come to
That
mind.
you know
Yeah,
you're doing. Yeah. So
yeah.
why don't you tell us a little bit about your crystal book? Like what's going on in it? Because I didn't get to peek at it yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, so it is that the best way to describe it is that it's a crystal grimoire. And so I love crystals.
Hmm.
I consider myself to be a crystal expert when it comes to magic, crystal magic.
Hmm.
I've studied with some of the best people, and I've had over almost two decades of so
Sometimes,
I love
sometimes.
stones. Yeah, I love stones, and
Yeah.
I get to, like I say, work with some really incredible people. And so I wanted to do two things. The first thing was, I wanted to create a book that had magic, like it was specifically written for witches, and
Okay.
gave them spells for each stone, that told
Oh,
them
I
how to
love that.
work with each stone, that told them how to cleanse each stone,
Hmm.
that gave them more resources to correspond and connect those stones to other areas of their life. And unlike with like modern witch, where it's all spells and recipes and rituals and all that good stuff. When it came to the crystal book, I realized I'm an oopy spooky witch. I like things to be,
Right,
and
right.
the crystal book was like, nay, nay, friend. And it was really, it was a thing. I'm
Bro,
like,
yeah, I love that.
no, I know, and I remember like going back and forth with my editor over this. And even she was like, this doesn't sound like you. Like, it just sounds, I don't know who it sounds like, but it doesn't sound like Devin. And
Right.
that's kind of concerning. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? What does it even, I wrote it.
Right. It
And
is me.
and I realized that it's because usually I take witchcraft so seriously, and it's so about like, this thing can be added to your life and will do this thing and it'll get this problem away from you. And,
Right.
that's kind of how I approach things. And, and building a spiritual practice with things that is consistent and valuable to you.
Hmm.
And, but with this crystal book, it was like, well, yeah, we're doing all that, just not the way you want to do it, and I realized the way that I typically approach things is where, there's a spell or there's a ritual that you can do. And with things like crystals, the value really comes in overexposure over time,
Right.
and
Yeah.
those sorts of things. So really considering that as a magical aspect of working with them, that became a big part of it. And the flip side of it too was, there's some other, like, I love dragons, as we were just talking about.
Yeah.
And they're one of the big things for me with crystals that I know a lot of people don't talk about. I've heard kind of whispers here and there. But something that'll be new for a lot of people is working with the crystal energy, or the dragon energy of a crystal. So we
Oh,
think of
yeah.
like the crystal spirits being like devas. It's usually way it's
Hmm.
presented, are angels or sometimes fairies. And that's all this high vibe stuff that we get
Right.
when we pick up the crystal. The crystal was made in Mama Earth,
Right.
probably over thousands of years, was shifted and molded and pressurized through all of these incredible forces.
Hmm.
And it's actually pretty freaking powerful. And we know that crystals come in veins, right? We identify them in
Yeah.
caves and veins
Hmm.
along ley lines.
Yeah.
And of course, dragons are associated with ley lines. And so in the book, I explore this whole thing and this concept of working with the dragon energies of
Oh,
the crystal. So that's different for, I think, for a lot of people.
right.
And then the rest of it, I mean, it really is about creating a magical practice where you can develop and trust your intuition when it comes to crystals. Like, my big thing is, listen, folks, this was all made up, right? Somebody made it up at some
Hmm.
point in time, and then it became like tradition, and
Right.
then we just don't question the tradition. And
Hmm.
sometimes you should, and like, tradition's great because it provides a lot of stuff, but when it
Right.
comes to you as a witch developing that most important thing, which is your authority over your psychic impressions and your spiritual life,
Right.
then it's really important to be able to say, oh, you know what? This golden healer quartz feels like it's going to do this for me, and trust that and lean into that. And that's something that a lot of my teachers were never, I don't think they ever felt comfortable just coming out and saying, because there was this, the system was all about supporting the tradition. And I'm like,
Yes.
well, yeah, but if we connect this with plants, this stone with a plant, then we would
Hmm.
say all these other energies would kind of come along with it and correspond with it. If we connected it to the tarot, which is a big
Right.
thing for me,
Yeah.
um,
Definitely.
then we go on a totally other journey, right? So stones
Right.
are
Yeah.
these incredible things that can add, you know inc- beautiful energy to your life through exposure over time, but also they can be little batteries in your workings, and they can be these
Hmm.
incredible allies that take your witchcraft, your intuition, your psychic abilities to the next level. And so that's what the crystal book is all about, where we explore all of that,
Right. Right.
um, with the intention over and over and over again, that this is about you creating your own practice. So I'm
Yeah.
going to explain all this stuff because that's my
Hmm.
job. Your
Right.
job is to figure out which part of the stuff works for you.
Hmm.
Hopefully, which I think a lot of it will, validate your own experiences as somebody who's been working with crystals.
Right.
and give you that little bit of permission. Not that we need permission, but I think some of us want to hear it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just
Right?
like a thing, like a societal thing. We're so used to,
Yeah.
getting that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So,
I agree.
I'm like, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I'm telling you, you're right. And so like just having
Yeah.
that whole, like which to which, let's talk about why, that kind of stuff. And doing all that in the context of a book is a privilege, because you can sculpt your verbiage in a better way than you would
Right.
maybe if you were just be spewing it out. So
Just
it's,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think like the point you had said about questioning things. I think again, another societal thing. Like we're just meant to just okay, that's how it is. Okay, and that's it. Not ask any questions. And
yeah,
like for me, that's like one of my favorite parts of being a witch: questioning freaking everything.
everything. I
Like
tell everybody that like
everything.
you need to be the annoying 4-year-old in the
Yes,
room who
totally.
follows everything up with why. And,
Right.
and just keep asking why until there is no answer that can be given to you. Everything's been exhausted. And that's where you start.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people. And if you aren't doing that, if you're just taking everything at face value and then you're stuck in an echo chamber, and you're not being you're not using critical thinking skills, which I think is very important. Critical thinking skills in occultism are, nobody ever talks about it. We all need to be critical thinkers.
Yes.
We all need to be looking at this stuff and asking,
It's so
those
true.
important questions,
Right.
and figuring out what the bullshit is, because there's a lot of bullshit. And
There's
this
so
isn't,
much bullshit.
yeah. And it's okay to say faith and spirituality and even religion, those are one thing that's, to me, that's very separate from the way that you actually run your work. Like these people, I'm just going to go off on a tirade.
You go ahead, do it.
The people who are working very hard to destroy reproductive rights in our country right now. Like my whole thing is like, is your faith, your personal faith, so bent on making rules for other people? Right? Like that's like this weird lack of control thing, like personal control,
and parts you don't have. Most of these people don't have the parts.
And then you get this other concept with it, where it's like these people have a faith that is all about a very specific limited viewpoint that you can't combat. So like if you are, like I tell people all the time, if you're talking to somebody who will say is like an evangelical, and you're trying to explain your tarot, or you're trying to explain your witchcraft or anything, they're not going to get it. And the reason they're not going to get it is because it is a closed system where anything that isn't this is evil. And so, like my nephew walked in on my sister, and I was giving my sister a reading. And, for a good long period of time, I was the dirty little secret that like, oh, we're going to go talk to Uncle Devin. And so, just sit down. I'll be in the other room. Yeah. So everybody comes to me when it gets serious, right? But
of course.
They deny that
then it's all okay. Then the cards are fine when that happens.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I remember like my nephew running into the room and saw me giving my sister a reading, and he was like, oh, those devil worshiping cards. And I'm like, you bless your little heart. Like, but that's the, like, out of the mouth of babes.
Yeah.
That's the, so when you're at a place in your life where you are, you're capable of like questioning just the things that you're bringing in that actually run your life and your world, like the whole, again, I'm going to reproductive rights. Like, do these people really think that this is legit, that the science is wrong, that the all of the information provided is they can just ignore it, and like that's just part of the paradigm? That's so weird to me. So I think,
and they don't question it. They just don't. They just believe it. There's no questions.
Boom. Yeah. So we just don't do that. I'm like, if you're a witch and you're just not questioning everything, what are you doing? I mean, it's fun in the beginning. Learn how to cook, right? Like learn how to make the pasta dish, whatever, before you go and make it your own, right? Like that's important.
Right.
But you have to realize that once you're done cooking that meal, you're going to think about the way you prepared it. You're going to realize you could do XYZ very differently, and it would fit your life better, and it would make more sense to how you understand and run your kitchen,
Yeah. No,
and so it's just, that's the stuff. I always question people's motives and what's going on behind I'm like,
Right. Yeah.
really?
No,
Like,
and it is, especially too, like with the internet stuff. And I know when Matt and I were at Tide and we were on the Which is Which panel, we were talking about it a little bit too about, you know, you do see these Instagram pictures, like these big altars and this and that. And then, you know, there are these like baby witches that are coming in that like, I don't even know where to get that stuff. I can't. And then it's like, no, 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 you don't need to do all that. Like, go
yeah,
outside, find a leaf and a rock, and there's your altar, you know? Like,
yeah,
that's all you need to do. And I think that's so
because that's what we
important.
did.
No, you
You know what I
don't.
mean?
It's like
Like,
nice
yeah,
to have all this stuff. And I mean,
yeah,
I like all this stuff. I'm a Libra. I like pretty things too.
amen. Yeah,
I
yeah.
get it. I get it. But, and I also think too, it's not rushing. Like,
Hmm.
just take your time with it. Like, even reading tarot or any other sort of divination, like, everybody just wants everything so quick because we're just a bunch of goldfish and 10 seconds we're onto something else, you know?
Yep,
And
yep,
it's one of those things that I'm always like, you take your time and learn it, really feel it in your body, really get to see where it sits and what it brings up. Because, you know, when you're learning and when you're asking these questions, it's going to bring shit up and you
yeah.
got to deal with it. And that's a part of your learning and your growing and developing your practice as well.
Well, and not only do you have to deal with it, but if you don't deal with it, it will get used against you
Right.
in some way. The
Mm-hmm.
energy will come back around and you will have to deal with it and it'll be ugly. And usually those are the demon. That's our demon work, right? That's our
Right.
shadow work that we have to do. But I tell people, like, people want to work with spirits. Spirits are great. Spirits are amazing. I
Right.
have, my life is spirits.
Right.
The thing though with when you start working with spirits is that there is this inevitable kind of boundary testing that kind of goes on, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's out for a meal and it's not their fault, everything's just existing, right?
Right.
And but a lot of these things, especially if if you're in witchcraft and you're working with a bunch of new spirits all the time, and they will use your weaknesses against you, and your
Mm-hmm.
shadows are your weaknesses. And so,
Right.
you know, if you struggled with alcoholism when you were younger, that stuff will come up again. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
just is part of the process. And so you have to be a critical thinker. You got to be able to like look back
Right.
and take care of yourself and know when you're more susceptible to those things. And that's such an, I'm
Right.
so glad you said that, because I think that's like, nobody ever is going there. And I'm like, no, you have to before you can go anywhere. Like, you have to be able to
Yeah,
really
you
take care
have
of yourself.
it just, yeah, like you said, it's just gonna come back around. No, but you can push it down for so long.
Yeah.
And I think too, just even when working with spirits too, I think people don't realize that they can place boundaries. Like, you can place boundaries, like you have to. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think so many people don't realize that. Like,
Yeah.
for me, I like a lot of times when I go to bed at night, I'm like, everybody leave me the F alone.
Yeah.
I
There's
need
rules.
sleep.
Yep. There's totally rules.
You know,
Yep.
and it is
The
like
rules. You
you
can't fuck
can
with the
put rules in
cats.
place.
Yep. You can't fuck with the cats. So no, because that was a thing for a minute. You can't fuck with the cats. You can't mess with any company that's coming along.
Yes.
Once the lights go off, nothing moves. There's no noises unless you're trying to get our attention because something's wrong, which has
Right.
happened. So
Yeah.
like we totally woke up. It was just, I think it was just Chaz and I, and Storm was off somewhere, and we woke up because there was this weird bang noise. And luckily, it happened because the surge protector that was in our living room caught on fire spontaneously,
Oh.
because it was just like this cheap kind of, whatever. So
Yeah.
it caught on fire, and the house started to go up in smoke. And
Oh, dear.
luckily, the spirits in the house were like,
Yeah.
"Hey, fuckers! Like, wake up! There's some shit to do."
Now get
So
up.
saved
Yeah.
us completely. But it was, so that's allowed to happen, right?
Yes.
But we got rules. And like, I'm here for you if you want to talk. Just like my friends, you can text me. You
Right.
can let me know, like, we need to communicate. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Little
fine.
tap tap. Yeah.
Let's
Like, but
chill.
be
But that's it.
respectful. Yeah.
There's no showing up on my doorstep unannounced. We don't do that
Right.
anymore, right?
No,
We
we
are in our
don't.
30s.
Or just
We
like
don't do
those phone calls, and you're just
no.
like, you stare, like I just stare at it, wait for it to go to voice.
Yeah. Why are you calling me? What is this?
Why? There's
We don't.
texting. Why are you calling
Yeah.
me?
It's so weird. And that's another thing too. I joke about with our generation, because like we were the generation that, like, the peak teenage thing to have, which I never had, was my own phone line, right? Getting your own phone line,
Oh yeah. No, I
because
never had.
then you were like amazing. You had all your,
You
you
are
were
so
posh and cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Like the
And
really long
now,
cord.
yeah. And now I'm like, no. Like, why? Like, I hate that people can get a hold of me this easy. I miss the days, and I think this is why, like, I hate to say it, the younger people don't mind it so
Them
much,
youngins.
right? Because they don't know the beauty of having an answering machine,
Right.
of being able to leave your home and just be in the car and actually
And there was
talk. And
nothing. There was nothing.
You had the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And the tapes that you recorded off of the radio,
right?
And and that was it. And whoever you were sitting with, and it was this beautiful thing. And so, I sound like get off my lawn, but I'm celebrating my age.
And those tapes took a long time to make.
It's true.
Like so long.
It's absolutely true.
Those were like pieces of art themselves.
Mixtape. People joke about mixtapes, right?
Right.
Mixtapes were a thing of love. Like, you created a mixtape, and then you'd have your own, but you would give copies of your mixtapes to people you loved, so that they too could have a whole experience.
Right.
And it would take an entire weekend sometimes to make the mixtape. Yeah. And then I never got into the actual like mixing, like DJ mixing with the tape stuff. I had friends that did that. That always looked like it was a little too much work for me.
Yeah, that was a lot of business happening.
But we were all about it, Yeah, and I mean, like, at this stage, I'm just celebrating my millennialism, like, because there's no reason not to. Like, our generation was told we were so lazy and we were just all these things, and like, if you read the stuff that like our generation was told, it was just depressing. And so the fact that like we are here and alive, and we're paying our bills and taxes and things, like, that means I am owed some crotchety old millennial talk every once in a while.
Exactly.
Like, I am allowed to talk about how things are different now, and you just don't know how good it was. But that's the thing. Kids today don't know how good it was to not have a phone shoved up your butt all the time.
Yeah, no,
like,
I mean, they absolutely do not. They do
so
not.
I have resentment about my phone. Yeah,
right.
Totally do.
Okay, so we have a little shadow work with the phone, Devin. Got it.
Yeah,
We're working on that.
Totally.
No, but it is true. And I think, though, in a way, it's almost sad, because when, you have these newer baby witches or whatever, they're missing out because they're so attached to that electronic device, and that has energy too. We know that phone can make you really happy, and it can really piss you off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that, and there is an exchange again with, like, maybe you're going to get into an argument with somebody you don't even know who it is. It could be like this 80-year-old man, it could be a 10-year-old, you don't freaking know, but yet it's changing your energy, and it's moving things. And and I think it's so important too, when teaching witchcraft or anything to the younger kids, that put that phone down. Take that time out. You're going to go out and you're going to go take a walk, and we don't need to see it. Like, you could tell us after, but you don't need your phone, because that's just like effing up the energy of you actually going out and being a part of nature and being with nature. And you can't hear what nature has to tell you. You can't go to the plants and talk to them if you're too busy, like, taking a selfie with it,
Sure.
And they have a lot to say. They do.
Yeah.
And it's
I just tell people, like, use your phone in magic. Like, that's fine. Like, incorporate all that, whatever you want, into your thing. You are allowed to do that. It is your practice. However, like, two things are true. We do not have the extrasensory perception that, like, we used to have. Like, that's just not a thing that happens. And it's because we can be stuck in the phone world, and we can do those things. And so extrasensory perception is a really big problem for people right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as psychics, we rely a lot on extrasensory perception. And so if those things aren't given a chance to develop like any other muscle, then we're missing out on a lot. And extrasensory perception is a survival mechanism.
Right.
So that's another thing that I'm like, there's that's kind of animal part of us that needs to be given more than just a gym to play in every once in a while.
Yes,
and
right.
That whole thing is part of it. And so for me, it's like, go camping and put your phone away. Just take a weekend. It'll be there. It's fine.
Like, it doesn't need to be forever. Like, take some pictures and then just put it away. And just because we are so unaware. Like, I mean, you see people just walk in and text, and like they're so unaware, you know, and like the funny videos when they walk into stuff and,
Yeah.
you know, but if they didn't have that all the time, like you said, that extra sensory perception would be like, oh, hey, watch out. You're going to pick, oh, wait, there's somebody coming at you over here.
Right.
And that's something that really, I think needs to, like, attention needs to be brought back to that. And we actually have a question here. So Manny Brian Keys wants to know, any hints for those of us who are about to embark on teaching the craft?
Well, what I tell everybody is don't feel the need to create your own content when you do it. Books exist for a reason. Mm-hmm. So even the classes that I teach, like we've got Black Rose and the Modern Witch University, we've got, I think Storm said it was almost 800 people in the university.
Oh, wow.
And
so awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Really great community of people. But the big thing is understanding that, like, even in our classes where we do make up all of the content, we do all the big heavy stuff and write all
right, like you structure it and all of that, right?
And like write up PDFs and do all of this stuff. Even when we do all that, there's still a huge recommended reading list. There's still and if you go in and you study with me personally, you have to read other people's books. Like, you have to read my books because that makes my life easier as your teacher. But you have to read other people's books, and then we're going to talk about what you get out of it, because critical thinking, right? And so
right. No, I love that. I don't think a lot of people do that.
Some interesting things come out when you do this. So, like, one of the things I love to mess with my students on is Nephilim and angels and aliens. And I just love to see how they respond to it. And so and sometimes it's like, you know, there's this serious, like, yes, they were aliens that came down, and is that who we're working with? Are we working with aliens? I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't there. Sure. Cool. Right.
Could
I don't know. Is that
be?
what you think happened? Why do you think that happened? You know, and there's these things that, like, putting it in those, because you can talk to somebody all day long, but you don't know if they get it until they start talking back to you. And
Absolutely.
so doing that's my whole approach. So I have people, and the best way to do that is to get you know, a discussion topic where there's meat there, right? And so go read somebody else's
and that just
book.
Like also opens those neural pathways too. Like, you're creating new ones, and then that's more energy exchange, like surface area going on.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like, as a teacher, something that really kind of grinds my gears is when teachers don't like for people to go, like, read other people's books or go study. Like, I don't have any of those rules. Like, you can study with whoever the hell you want to study with. If I feel like there's a conflict with, like, what you're doing there and what we're doing together, we'll talk about it. Maybe we'll go on hold, or, you know, I'll say, hey, you got to take a break from one of us for a while and come back. That's happened once in all of the years. But otherwise, I think it's so important for us as teachers to foster the idea that you are, again, a free thinker, right? And you need to be able to come up with your own concepts and your own understanding of things, but more importantly, that you're hearing other people's viewpoints.
Right.
It's so important to hear other people's viewpoints.
It's so important.
And when you get to hear that, because some of the stuff, it's just like, oh yeah, that's not for me, chill, whatever. But then there's going to be one thing, just one little half of a sentence that's going to trigger this whole other thought process for you that your teacher was never going to give you, because that wasn't their trip, right? And that's the whole thing. Like, I only teach what I'm interested in. And so when people, you know, how on earth could I teach you everything that you would need to know and that you would be interested in, right? There's no way. Right. And so I'm a big believer in learning as much as you possibly can, and then coming back together and talking about what you did learn.
Yeah.
And, you know, yes, have your core, have your stuff that makes it a tradition or that makes it a coven. But aside from that, when you're talking about building up those witch skills and you're talking about building up those psychic abilities, it really, really, really is so important that people can go get exposed to other occultists and what their journey was, so that they can make sense of what they are doing in their practice.
Right. And, you know, and that even goes with just tarot readers and stuff too. I love just going to different tarot readers just to see their perspective and see how they do it. And that kind of really goes right along with it. So Spirit of TWI said, Had Devin tried to water you due to your hair color? You may want to run.
No, you have a nice, like, luscious color going on. I think it would, if we watered you, it might be too much.
You know, yeah, you don't want to do that. It will not be pretty. And I just remembered the name of the hair color, Pulp Riot.
Oh, okay, cool.
I knew it was
I use Arctic Fox. I like Arctic Fox.
Yeah, that's a good one.
They
too.
have a like eerie good coverage.
But, yeah. Pulp Riot is definitely the one I've been using. I've been using it for years and years, and it's really good. It doesn't wash out like fast either, like it stays in. So that I just remembered as we were watering my hair. I love it. That's so great. Why not? Why not? I love it.
Absolutely.
So why don't you tell us where to find you on the interwebs? Where's the easiest place to find all of your goodies?
Just go to modernwitch.com. And we have so many cool things that are like in the works right now.
Really?
It's incredible.
Can you give us like a hint of something?
Yeah, so
I
can tell you. I started Modern Witch the show 13 years ago.
Oh wow! Wow! I can't believe it's been that long. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were pagan don't get me wrong. There were pagan podcasters before I came around,
right?
And there were, especially in the early days of podcasting, there were a couple of people that were like, especially on the East Coast, that were putting out some really cool content, and then they just disappeared, and we've never heard from them again. And then I came in right after that, and so as a pagan podcaster, and there's still there's Down at the Crossroads. If you ever get a chance to listen to that podcast,
yes,
phenomenal. New World Witchery has been around since that time too. We all were there together. Wiggly and Way. All of us all started podcasts of roughly around the same time, and we're still pumping out stuff.
Yeah.
So, but we're all part of this like OG occult podcast kind of community. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
They're just great people. They're phenomenal. But anyway, so blah blah blah. So I started the show, and it was really, I had moved to California. I had no friends, and it was my way of making friends, really, was to do the podcast and to stay in contact with some of my friends that I had made along, my life.
Right.
And so, as you know, going to events, you meet a lot of famous people. And so why not have a podcast where we can talk about this stuff that we're talking about anyway? And so that was my whole thing. And so Modern Witch was born, and I started it in my bathroom because it was the room I could shut all the doors to and have like the quietest. And so I was interviewing people like Good Day Parma, I think he still goes by Good Day professionally. I interviewed him in my bathroom. It was like a whole thing. Bless him, he was very patient.
That's so great.
Yeah, I don't know that I would sit in somebody's bathroom and do an interview with them, but he did, bless him. So it was always this dream that Modern Witch would become this really big thing, and I didn't exactly know what it was. And so over the years, I kept the podcast going, and I did a magazine. So we had Modern Witch magazine that came out. There's 5 issues of that.
Wow.
It was very cool.
Awesome.
And then we did a bunch of video stuff and some TV spots, and it was really cool, great stuff. And then I had this awareness that I wanted my own network. I wanted Modern Witch Network. And so I wanted other shows. I wanted to be able to focus on, I love pop culture. And I feel like there's enough educational stuff out there. So Modern Witch has never been an educational show. We've always been life and style. Yeah. And I think that's why Cosmo Magazine picked us up, and AV Club. And I think we just go about it differently. And it's not, it's like you and I, we're sitting here talking, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Very different from the 5 of Wands means.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes.
And so, 10 years of that, or 13 years of that, ended up leading me to this realization that I can do it. Like I don't have a day job in the same way that I used to. Modern Witch gets to be my day job. So for the last 6 months, I have been going insane, putting all the energy into developing these things. So and the official announcements are coming, so I can't spoil anything.
Okay, yeah. That's good though. That was a nice little teaser though. That was good.
I can say Storm has a show that'll be on the network that's coming out called Witch Power Daily, and it will be a daily drop podcast that's all focused on developing your daily practice as a witch,
Okay.
in different techniques, and interviewing people who are in that vein of practice as well. We have a show with somebody who you probably know. She's
Okay.
really cool. I'm letting her drop it, but it'll be
Sweet.
starting in just a couple of weeks, and
Oh, okay.
I can say it's from New York. So we've got the West
Oh,
Coast covered, and she will have the East Coast covered. So that's going to happen.
all right. This East Coast girl's excited.
Yeah, and we've got a new video series that's about to
Ooh,
start.
awesome.
I'm doing finally doing a streaming thing, and it's going to be daily show for witches kind of a thing, and there's a lot going on, so
A
it's
lot brewing in that
yeah,
cauldron.
it's really exciting. And so we've got like these new shows and a new book coming out that's in the
Yeah.
brand as well, and we've got new classes at Modern Witch University. So like I've been able to really devote time to that and connect with people who wanted to devote time to it as well. And because where we're at now, of course, having like Storm and Matt being part of the university and putting their energy into it, it's really amazing too. So
Oh, that's awesome.
it's so cool. It's a really good time for
It
Modern Witch.
is. It's
Like,
all
yeah,
good
absolutely.
stuff. I love it. I'm so happy for you guys. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. I love
Very
it.
exciting.
Well, thank you so very much for coming on. This was so much fun. I feel like we could just keep talking forever and ever, but Instagram probably wouldn't allow that.
Easy, right.
But
Absolutely.
it was awesome to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
And I can't wait to meet you in person because I already met Storm and Matt, so now I need to meet Chaz and you, and it's complete. And it'll be awesome. I love it. And thank you so much. And everybody, if you do have any of Devin's books, make sure you do reviews. Reviews are gold for all of us authors. We need them. We love them, and we appreciate them. And also, you can pre-order his new book right now. You can go to Amazon, Llewellyn, all the places where you buy your books. All right. You have a fantastic day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you. Bye, guys. Thanks, everyone.